Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're exploring a place with secrets and history and stories to tell. It's one of my favourite places to visit. So stay tuned and thank you for joining me as we make our way to Bletchley Park. Setting off on a beautiful Wednesday morning. Little breeze in the trees, sun is shining. Bletchley Park has been one of my favourite places for many years because I've always been interested in the historical era of the Second World War, but this place is a story not just of the war and of the military, but of intelligence and mathematics and logic and code breaking. As I'm sure you're aware, Bletchley was the home of the codebreakers during the Second World War and the beginnings of GCHQ, the government's communication headquarters, and it was there that the precursor to the modern day computer was developed. There are a lot of stories I could tell you there, but I'll just show you what I can. Anyway, to get there we've got an hour and 15 minutes heading east on a beautiful morning. Now there are so many fascinating stories you could tell from a place like Bletchley Park. But one of the reasons it's particularly special for me to arrive on motorbike is that a story that's captured my imagination since I learned about it was that of the motorcycle dispatch riders that would bring important documents and things to and from the park, and intelligence all up and down the country, I suppose. There are a couple of lovely old motorbikes on display, and you can read a little bit about, just a little bit mind, about the riders who brought packages to the park. And they say that one of the best reasons to write a book is because the book you want doesn't exist yet. And looking on my Kindle or on Amazon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I couldn't find a book about that subject, about motorcycle dispatch riders in the Second World War. It had never occurred to me before to want to write a fictional book. I've thought about writing non-fiction many times. Maybe I'll write a physics textbook someday or something. But a fiction story never occurred to me until I suddenly realised that could be the story I tell. So they say everyone's got a book in them, trying to get out. And I'm not making any kind of a commitment to you. I'm not saying this book is going to be published anytime soon, if ever. But if I ever do write a book, no, I'll say more than that. I would like to. So that's one of the reasons I'm heading to Bletchley today on a motorcycle, is for research. Now this is a very different motorcycle from what they would have ridden in the war. And of course it's a very different time. One thing to go off on a jolly on your holidays, quite another to... Ooh. Oh, wow. I'm a big fan. Quite another to deliver messages day and night in all weathers without stopping to rest. If you think about writing a book, you know, it's tempting, like many things, to start off by saying, oh, I couldn't do that. That must be some special skill, some special category of person that I'm not and skill that I don't have. But I just tend to think these days, at the end of it, what will it really be? What does it really boil down to? It's a person typing on a keyboard. They're going to type out a book, and it's going to be planning and such, and developing the storyline and the characters and the incidents. But at the end of the day, a person is going to type out chapters and make a book, and why the hell can't I do that? I'll tell you what, riding around these country roads certainly feels a bit more like we've gone back in time. I don't know when the cat's eyes were invented and the white lines were painted in the road quite like they are now, but when you get a bit with no cars going by, you could easily imagine for a while that we are several decades back in time. Oh, look at this. Beautiful. And the view. Oh, don't look at the view, look at the road. Oh, I'm just giggling to myself at the thought that we're going to live here. Last time I came to Bletchley was down the M40. This is a very different way to come. Lovely. Bloxham, here we are. I'm not sure if I've ever been to Bloxham before. I'm aware that on the country roads a lot of these guys would like to go much faster than me, whether or not they should, so let's let them out. Hey, that reminds me, have you seen a YouTube channel called Ogmios' School of Zen Motoring? I used to play that for my kids sometimes. I loved it. Well, he's done very well, and he's only gone and gotten himself commissioned on BBC. You can play, he's got a show on iPlayer, you can watch it now. It's like his YouTube channel, only a bit more professional. There's a very distinct smell in the town of Adderbury. I wonder what it is. Reminds me of that place near Northampton where the Weetabix factory was based. Was it Burton Latham? No, oh, I've forgotten now. And you could tell when they were making the chocolate flavour of Weetabix because it smelled different. Adderbury is a lot bigger than I thought. Oh, we're going right here. Here's the 20. This is one of those roads that does not look like a 20. Riding through a place called Croughton where there's an RAF base. And I remember now the roads of Northamptonshire. I'm not quite sure if we're in Northamptonshire yet, but we're certainly going to pass through it on our way to Milton Keynes. The roads of Northamptonshire are beautiful, and the countryside you can see. I remember Croughton tea rooms. Lovely. Here they come. I used to have a bike bell on my handlebars there. Ding ding. That was fun. Shall I tell you the story of how I knew there was an RAF base in Croughton? It's weird. No, it's too weird. It's too. I don't think I should. It's too weird. Let's think for a minute. Does it implicate anybody identifiable? No. Maybe. Is it gonna get me demonetized? No. Maybe. No, it's we've just ended Buckinghamshire and we're on the A421 towards Milton Keynes. A little bit faster here, we're going to cover some miles. Milton Keynes is the land of the roundabouts. Salden Place. If you lived here, you'd be home by now. nobody's going to be living here for at least a few months. Welcome to Bletchley, home of the Codebreakers. Here's Bletchley Station. Where I think lots of people would have arrived if it's in the same place as it was back in the war. That's where you come out of the visitor centre there and we get into the park. It's a fun place to park. Morning! Visiting the park?
You're here for Bletchley?
Yes.
First time?
No. Do you have a place for bikes in particular?
Right. You'll see some motorcycles just there, be seen behind.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Here's the entrance. Yeah, I see some bikes there. Now, these old buildings, they've been just in this state for as long as I've known the place. Bletchley is a very interesting place because it remained pretty much unoccupied or unknown. Let's have a look at these. For at least 30 years after the war. Because of the secretive nature of the work they did here, the people who worked here just disbanded and went about their ways. They'd all signed the Official Secrets Act, all obviously sworn to secrecy, and the site was a secret. Nobody was supposed to know what went on here, and for 30 years apparently it remained a secret. I might be cheeky and just use this lamppost to lock the bike to, not for peeing. After it became public knowledge what had happened here, the site was eventually opened to visitors, but they had the hardest time for ages producing a sort of an interesting museum experience, because the people who'd worked here, many of them still felt that for 50 years, or perhaps indefinitely, it was their duty to keep all the secrets that they learned here. I believe the place opened as a museum in 1993, and I visited with my dad in, I think it was 2003, and even then the people who worked here, who would now be much older, had not yet come forward with their stories and their letters and photographs and documents and things. But now, in the years since, the place has become a very successful and popular museum and attraction, and quite rightly so. The entrance building here has a very interesting sort of introductory video and exhibits, as well as the gift shop. The lady on reception was very friendly and explained to me that, because she saw I was what she called a content creator, that the videos and things produced in here are copyright and shouldn't be recorded, but everything else is okay. It's a new problem, isn't it, for exhibits and museums and places, how to handle people who are filming, because there are some things that are IP and copyright, and that was handled very carefully and respectfully and accurately. I appreciated that. Now, after the war, the site sort of closed down, and parts of it were used for things like an industrial site. Part of it has been sold off for industrial work, and there are some houses over there. But in later years, some organisations took over buildings within the site, and when we visited, they still had the projectionists of the cinematography, or the cinema enthusiasts, the people who like old projectors and keeping them running. I think also the National Hornby Model Railway Club was here. Also the National Computer Museum, obviously. As the site expanded and the popularity of the attraction increased, those organisations were moved out. But one that still remains is the National Radio Centre, which is here. This really clever exhibit explains how radios transmit information. And then here is GB3RS, a live radio station. Wow, just had the most fascinating discussion with the gentleman at the station there, who is what we would call a ham. He's a ham who uses ham radio. And there's a reserved band for amateur radio, which is around the 14 megahertz band, I think, and he was showing me his main terminal there, which is called software-defined radio. And I remember reading about that in the early 2000s. Computers are now so fast that instead of tuning an analog circuit to the radio frequency, they just digitize the entire radio spectrum, and then in the computer they're pulling out stations. So he was tuning in to different carrier frequencies and finding ham operators around the world. Listening to one from Hungary, transmitting just then. Fascinating stuff. If you've watched the movie The Imitation Game, before that one I liked very much called Enigma, you might be familiar with the story that the Germans were using machines to encrypt information before the war. But when the war started, the Enigma machine became used to encrypt military intelligence messages. And a team of codebreakers were recruited to try and break these codes, including a man who we know a lot about called Alan Turing, who is remembered here at the museum with his statue made of slate. In the end, the code breaking was a combination of very clever mathematics to narrow down the possibilities and ingenious machines like the bomb over there in the hut that we'll have a look at, which would automatically check combinations and try settings to try and find the right one. And then by the end of the war, saw the beginning of the development of the first electronic computer called Colossus. I believe we owe a great deal to the Czech and Polish, whose mathematics and engineering was instrumental in breaking these codes. Those who worked at the park were sworn to secrecy, obviously, and wouldn't tell their friends or family what they were doing. There's a lovely poster on the wall over there that talks about secrecy, and it advises that, when someone asks what you do there, you should just say, "Oh, work," and be vague about it. In the beginning here, the Mansion House was purchased and became the home of what was then called the Government Code and Cipher School, which later became GCHQ. But as the operation expanded, these huts were hastily built around the site, and many of the original ones, I think most of them, still remain today that you can look around. God, it's dark in here. The film that's shown here in the teleprinter building is incredible, a multi-screen projection about D-Day and the role that intelligence and Bletchley played in D-Day. Well, obviously, can't show you any of it. And this is one of the newer exhibits called The Intelligence Factory, telling the story of how Bletchley may have started as a small-scale group of codebreakers, but has, by the end of the war, turned into a huge production line of intelligence. Up to around 9,000 people working at Bletchley and the areas around, intercepting messages, transcribing them, breaking codes, analysing intelligence, and storing and cataloguing. Huge industrial-sized effort. And you have to remember, most of the people working here didn't know really anything about what was going on. The people intercepting just random-looking letters of Morse code, the people transcribing them, delivering them. They didn't know what the intelligence meant. People spent their whole careers typing out meaningless strings of text and delivering them, and obviously only at the upper levels would those who were privileged to have the information be directing military resources. This special exhibit is on the age of AI. Of course, this is a very fitting place to talk about AI because Turing himself in 1950 proposed a test for machine intelligence after the computer was invented. He said that if you could talk with a computer, basically chat on a keyboard with it in another room, and chat with a person, on a keyboard in another room, and you couldn't tell the difference, if they were indistinguishable, that you couldn't tell which one was the computer and which one was the person, then that would be the milestone at which we could say that the computer was intelligent or sentient or alive. And obviously we've long since passed that point. But do we really think that ChatGPT is alive? I don't think so. And in 2023, an important summit was held here at Bletchley called the AI Safety Summit, about the future of AI and important implications. I made a friend. Hi. Now, I'm a physicist, which sort of makes me a mathematician, but not really. And I do my best to understand this stuff. Over the years, I've gradually tried to learn more about how the code breaking worked. But it's, you know, the heart of it is, of course, beyond me. And anyone who tells you this stuff's easy and tries to explain it to you is probably exaggerating or very, very clever. But it seems to revolve around the concept of things like cribs. Yes, the combinations used in Enigma are so vast that it would take you forever to crack them. But you don't try all the combinations, you narrow down the possibilities. For example, if we know what some of the text says, we have a way to start trying prioritizing some combinations more than others. Apparently, sometimes the reason Enigma was breakable was because it wasn't used correctly. For example, you shouldn't have any predictable text in the message. The really easy, obvious example was that lots of messages were signed off with HH, and you know what that stands for. But it meant that there was a way to guess and narrow down the possibilities. It's nice to walk around the grounds here because they've got recordings that play from behind trees and things, like a rowing boat in the bushes there of the lake, and by the bicycles here you can hear bells ringing and bikes riding. And on the lawn there you can hear a group of people playing cricket or rounders or something, and every now and then a Spitfire flies over. It adds to the ambience. Now we're heading through to one of my favourite bits of the park, which is the garages. They don't have a lot of vehicles or equipment or anything set up here, but it's still the place where you're going to think about the riders and vehicles that would have arrived and the people that maintained them. And for the book I've got in mind, this spot is obviously very inspiring to think about the comings and goings and what was involved in delivering these messages. And then this gate right at the back of the site, which opens out onto the church grounds there, is the place where motorcycle dispatch riders would arrive day and night carrying intercepted messages from Y stations. So obviously this spot is giving me ideas for stories. There it is, 1943 Norton WD-16H. You can just imagine someone thumping through the countryside with a leather satchel over their shoulder, stopping for nothing, with vital intelligence to deliver. Okay, walking around the site, the ideas are coming thick and fast, so if you'll excuse me, it's time to start making some notes. As always, you can't do a place like this justice in a YouTube video, but I've got some new ideas and it's been a great visit. Right, it's a bit of a way home, so I'm going to hit the road. What a fascinating place, eh? I'm always intrigued and inspired by the stories here at Bletchley Park. Well, the phone says it's 2 hours, but we'll allow a little bit longer to get home. Thank you for watching another video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.